Let's take a look at that slapping, tapping, hammer-on from nowhere riff that you just heard. And what I want to do here is kind of talk about how I'm blending all these different techniques together. Because when we're writing riffs, it's really easy to kind of just stick with, one technique or a couple of different ideas. But it's really fun to blend these different sounds together if you can, but it's a little bit tricky to do if you haven't done it before. So let's take a look at this riff, and I'll talk about how I'm mixing all of these different techniques together. One thing to always keep in mind when you're writing riffs like this is that technique is not music. Techniques are a means to an end. They're a way to make music. They're the tools to make music. And if I want a certain sound, I'm going to lead towards a certain technique. But just because I can do something doesn't mean I necessarily should. In this case, I wanted certain different sounds sort of mixed together, so I'm combining these techniques in a way that's going to make that happen. But the technique is very much secondary, right, to the sound. The sound is always what I want. It's just that certain techniques are going to give me the sounds that I want. This riff is done on a standard tuned 6-string guitar, so nothing fancy. And it starts like this. So we have a slap with our thumb, and I'm not really doing like a full bass guitar kind of slap. I'm more just bringing my thumb down. So I have my hand in finger picking position, and I bring my thumb down like so. And I'm not doing any double thumbing here, so I'm not going down and up like you would if you're thumping. This is more of just a straight down here, and then I'm going to mix in some of my other fingers as well. So open E string, and this is all over an E minor to start. Then we have this hammer-on from nowhere idea, so I'm going to pick the top 3 strings open and hammer on this E minor triad. A little tricky. As I hammer on, I actually flatten my first finger so I mute those higher strings. So there's already a mixture of a bunch of techniques. We have slap, finger pick, hammer on from nowhere. And then it's right into a tap. Then I pull off the tap and then slide my first finger and then back to another slap. And right off the bat there we have 4 or 5 different techniques all in a row. And part of the reason I'm doing this is, of course, because that's the sound I'm kind of going from here. And you couldn't get this kind of sound by just slapping. But also, I'm using these techniques as a way to get from one place to the next. So, the hammer-ons from nowhere give me time to get my finger over to tap, and then I pull off and slide. And this slide gives me time to get my thumb back for another slap. So I'm using these different techniques as a way to get from one place to the next nice and smoothly. So that's one way you can use different techniques and combine them together, is to give yourself a nice way to get from one part of the guitar to the next in a nice smooth fashion that doesn't feel disjointed. From here I do another chord, finger picking again, and then slide the whole chord. Then it goes into this. So what I'm doing here is I'm slapping, and then doing index, middle. And this is done as a triplet. So slap, index, middle, triplet, 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 triplet. Have kind of a pickup slap too, so it's almost like 2 slaps in a row. Triplet, triplet. And then from here we go into this chord. Sort of a B minor 9 sort of a deal. And I bend just my index finger. Let the chord ring. So I'm mixing a bend in here as well. Doing A7. Then I have this slap to end. So slap, middle, slap, slap. Another triplet, triplet. So altogether, the first half of this riff. And a little faster. The second half of this riff starts the same as the first. Except for at the end there I go up instead of down. And that leads into the last part of the riff, which is this G9 chord, the G dominant chord. Then I do more of this hammer-on from nowhere arpeggio. So the open top 3 strings again. But this time I'm hammering on a G major arpeggio. Then I do this tap at the 15th fret on the D string and the B string. This is part of that G7 G dominant chord. Then I pull off to the open strings from there. then go to an F sharp 7 sharp 5 chord. And then end the riff with a little bend on the 3rd fret. So that part. So let's talk about the chords that are happening in this riff. I'm starting on E minor, but it's really kind of in the key of B minor overall, or I guess E Dorian, you could think of it that way. So it's like E minor 7 or E minor. And then it goes to B minor in the first half, and then to A, 7. There are some passing chords there, so for example, so it would be like so E minor, D, B minor, A7, and then a quick G, right, if I was thinking that together. So E minor, D, B minor, A7, G. And then in the second half, we're going to raise up after the E minor. So it's like E minor, F sharp, minor, major, I'm not sure exactly, it's just a power chord. Then to a G dominant chord, so G9. And then it goes to F sharp 7. So that would be like your 5 chord in the key of B minor. And at the end of this riff, it goes up into B minor. So kind of a basic minor progression, but it has some interesting notes in there, and they kind of work well with the open strings in most cases. So even on this like G dominant chord, these top 3 open strings work to make like a G6 sort of sound. So I can use the open strings as a way to get from one place to the next, and I definitely do that at the end here. When I have this chord, I pull off to the open string, gives both my hands time to get where they need to go next. So here's this entire riff played slowly. And closer to the actual tempo. I'm going to play this whole little piece here so you can hear it. I'll put the tabs on screen for this particular riff. Hopefully throughout that explanation you saw how I'm combining all these different techniques together to get different sounds, but also to allow me to move around the fretboard more fluently. This is obviously not a technique I'm super good at, the slapping stuff, but having a riff like this where I'm mixing it with other techniques that I'm much better at, I'm able to write a riff that sounds really cool and very different from what I might normally do. So this is definitely something you should try yourself. Try to reach outside of your normal techniques and try a few different things, and then you can blend them in with techniques that you're good at and you can create something interesting, hopefully. So try some of these ideas out for yourself, and if you enjoyed this lesson, subscribe, hit the bell notification, like, comment, share, all of that, and I will see you in the next video. Till then, stay proggy.